Daniel Jimenez. This is my oral report on taxing the wealthy. Taxes are an important part of our society. Everyone pays them because everyone benefits from the services that the government provides. The government wouldn't be able to provide these services without tax revenue. The services that the government provides with taxes include stability, security, law and order, and public schooling systems. Sadly, it turns out that not everyone pays their fair share of taxes. In fact, the wealthiest citizens actually pay a lower percentage of tax than the middle class. Considering we live in a country with a progressive taxing system, which is a system in which, as a citizen earns more money, they pay a higher percentage of that money to the federal government, the current state of things is a stark contrast to the whole point of the system, which is a system that puts less of a burden on the people who can't afford it and more of one on the people who can. That is a wrong that must be righted. The way this taxing system is currently structured, the U.S. Federal Income Tax Code is made up of 6 tax rate percentages, or tax brackets. The lowest bracket is 10% and applies to the first $17,000 earned by a married couple filing together. For every dollar they earned up to $17,000, a dime of every dollar goes to the federal government. The highest tax bracket is 35% and applies to all income earned over $379,000 for married couples. In the middle of the highest and lowest are brackets of 15%, 25%, 28%, and 33%. Hearing this, you would think that in theory that the system should work. Today, that 35% rate is basically imaginary, thanks to a tax bill Bush signed in 2003 that cut taxes on capital gains and dividends to 15% each, from 20% and 35% respectively. Capital gains are the money earned after selling stocks, bonds, real estate, or other capital assets. Dividends are the money earned that a publicly traded company pays to shareholders after earning a profit. Since the rich are far more likely than lower income people to own stocks and other highly valued capital assets, the capital gains and dividend cuts really lifted a high percentage of taxes off the wealthy. This means that for the wealthiest citizens with stocks, bonds, or other capital assets such as real estate that make up a large percentage of their income, they end up having to pay a much lower tax percentage than the 35%. In August 2011, Warren Buffett, the world's third wealthiest person according to Forbes magazine, published a piece in the New York Times that exposed the fact that he had to pay just 17.4% of his income taxes in 2010. He said that even his secretary paid a higher percentage of his or her taxes to the federal government. Buffett said, like many of his mega-rich friends, the bulk of his taxable income came in the form of capital gains and dividend payments. He argued that those extraordinary tax breaks should be taken away from the ultra-wealthy and that the rich should bear a far greater tax burden than they currently do. This is coming from the third wealthiest man, not in the country, but the whole world. There is a disgusting realization that should come to all those who hear this, that the people who are supposedly make up the backbone of America's government's funds actually pay lower percentages than the people who the progressive system is supposed to help. The simple fact is that the American government needs those funds with a national debt that is over $15 trillion. Who can truly say that money towards decreasing that national debt is bad? Though the naysayers of actions to tax the wealthy say that the extra revenue would hardly make a dent in the debt, think about the government's revenue, which is only a little over $2.3 trillion. That is a gap of almost $13 trillion between what the government earns and what it owes to its various debtors. The amount of money earned from taxes would go up substantially enough so that in the long run a substantial amount of revenue would be earned from simply taxing the wealthy what they are supposed to be taxed. A law that would put the rates of tax of capital gains and dividends up to 13% would even out this gross injustice, or even simple flat brackets, meaning that if you fall into the 35% bracket, you pay 35% on all income earned. This would allow the government more money to spend on programs like Obama's proposed American Jobs Act that will create much needed jobs in this time of mass unemployment. Even many millionaires support the idea of higher taxes on their incomes. Jill Kaufman, a millionaire living in Denver, said, "I feel we have a moral responsibility in a democratic society to pay our fair share, to pay higher taxes so we don't have to cut education and health care and Social Security." And Warren Buffett agrees. Buffett ended his Times opinion piece by calling for immediate increases on taxable income earned beyond both the 1 million and 10 million levels, as well as a hike in the capital gains and dividend tax rates. He said, "My friends and I have been coddled long enough by a billionaire-friendly Congress." In response to the peace and uproar that followed in September 2011, Obama instructed a new congressional supercommittee to consider changing the federal income tax code to reflect Buffett's proposal. Sadly, many legal experts say that these laws that Obama proposes that will make people who earn over $1 million pay their fair share of taxes will never come into the law. This is from the man who we elected to voice our opinions. It is up to us, the American people, to say that the wealthy do not need to be protected, that they should pay their due to our society. That it is unjust that many Americans pay a higher percentage of tax than the wealthiest Americans, even a higher percentage than the third wealthiest man in the world. It is up to us, the American public, to tell our representatives with our voices and our votes that every American should pay their fair dues, and that out of any group of Americans, that the rich are not the ones who need to be protected by financial law and by our government.